Hello, this is Priscilla Rice, and I'm coming to you from Live Oak Recording Studio. This week, we're going to have a rebroadcast of one of our earlier classic podcasts. We hope you enjoy it, and thanks so much for listening. Episode 97, OMG, I'm an Introvert?
You're listening to the official BNI podcast with BNI founder and chairman, Dr. Ivan Misner. Stay tuned for networking and referral marketing tips from the man who's been called the father of modern networking, along with suggestions and insights into getting the most from your membership in the world's largest networking organization, BNI. To be sure you never miss an episode of the official BNI podcast, subscribe at the iTunes Music Store or right on our homepage at bnipodcast.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the official BNI podcast brought to you by networkingnow.com, which is the leading site on the net for networking downloadables. I'm Priscilla Rice, and I'm coming to you from Live Oak Recording Studio in Berkeley, California. And I'm joined on the phone today by the founder and the chairman of BNI, Dr. Ivan Misner. Hello, Ivan, and how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm calling you from Paris. I'm in Paris visiting BNI chapters this week, and later this week I'll be going to Scandinavia to do a presentation at the Ice Hotel in Scandinavia.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
I know it is fun. It's going to be fun in Scandinavia, and we're having a great time here in Paris.
So what does OMG mean?
All right. If you have no idea what OMG means, go ask a teenager. Well, that's how I learned what it meant when I was getting texts from my kids. OMG. Okay, well, technically it stands for Oh My God. But just so we don't offend anybody, I'm going to go with Oh My Goodness. Now, let's talk about the introvert thing, okay? OMG, oh my goodness, I'm an introvert. That's the title of today's podcast, and let me explain.
Okay.
My wife and I were having a really relaxing dinner one night recently, and we were sitting around the kitchen table, and we were talking when I made some offhanded comment about being an extrovert. It fit into the context of the conversation. She looked over at me and she said, honey, I hate to break it to you, but you're an introvert. And, I smiled and said, yeah, sure, I'm an introvert. It's like, insert laugh track here. I'm an introvert, right? And she looked at me and she quite earnestly said, no, really, you're an introvert. And, man, I protested. I said, come on, I'm a public speaker. I do these BNI podcasts. I'm the founder of the world's largest networking organization. I am not an introvert. I can't be. I mean, you're joking, right? And she absolutely insisted that I was an introvert. And then she proceeded to share with me all the ways that I have introverted tendencies. Well, I have to admit, I was really taken back by this, and all of the examples she gave were really on the mark. So, but I still couldn't believe I was an introvert. On the other hand, I've been married to her for 20 years. I mean, there's a chance she might actually know me pretty well. So I went off the next day to do some research. And I did an internet search, and I found a test that tells you whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. Was I in for a shock? The test said that I was a situational extrovert. It explained that I was something of a loner, that I was a loner, that I was reserved around strangers, but that I was very outgoing in the right context. And it was at that moment that I said, oh, my goodness, I'm an introvert. And in the haze of my surprise, some really important things came into clarity for me. I'm 52 years old. BNI is 24 years old. And for the first time, it really struck me why, one of the really important reasons why I started BNI more than 2 decades ago. Because the bottom line was, I think most people know this story. I was a management consultant, and I was looking for referrals, and I put together people I trusted and liked, and we met, and we passed referrals, and someone came who couldn't join and asked if I'd open up a second chapter, and I said yes, and we did the second one, and that led to a third one, and on and on. But the bottom line, and I'd never really thought about this until I took this test, I was naturally uncomfortable meeting new people. particularly at chamber functions or other business functions. And so this approach created a system that enabled me to meet people in an organized, structured networking environment that did not require that I actually talk to strangers.
Interesting.
Like, oh my goodness, I'm an introvert. Now, this is funny. If any of the listeners have ever seen me at a BNI event, I generally, when I go to regions, a BNI, I ask the BNI director to have someone walk me around and introduce me to visitors and to members so that I can connect with as many people as possible. That's what I would always tell them.
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, it's because I'm uncomfortable, just like anyone else, I thought. I'm uncomfortable walking around just introducing myself alone. And when I came to that realization, it's like, oh, my goodness, I'm an introvert. And then I realized the whole notion of the material, and I've talked about it on podcasts, I've written about it for years, the whole idea of acting like a host, not a guest, and volunteering to be the ambassador at a chamber event, or be the visitor host at a BNI group. These are great ways that other people who are introverted can make sure to introduce themselves to other people in a comfortable environment. And then it struck me, these are the ways I used to move around more comfortably at networking events, not just ways that I recommended for those poor introverts out there to network. Oh my goodness, I am an introvert. Who would have thought? Well, okay, besides my beautiful wife, who would have thought? Now more than ever, I truly believe that whether you are an introvert or an extrovert or a situational extrovert, you can be great at networking. Both introverts and extroverts have strengths and weaknesses. If you can find ways to enhance your strengths and minimize your weaknesses, anyone can be a great networker, even an introvert like me.
That's great. Well, personally, I've always felt rather shy, and so I feel sort of similar to what you're talking about. And I think you're right that BNI creates an atmosphere where you don't have to worry about being shy.
You don't, and I think this is really amazing, and it's sort of an epiphany for me because I've always thought of myself as an extrovert because I certainly come across extroverted in many situations, but in other ways, and there's a whole laundry list of things that indicate that I'm not. I love being home. And if you look at some of my readings, particularly in my blog, I talk about where's my favorite place on the planet? Home. I want to go home. When the phone rings, I don't want to answer it. I don't want to talk. I like to go home and spend time with my family, or go up to my lodge up at Big Bear and spend time up there. So there are a number of natural tendencies that I have that are, in fact, introverted. But in certain situations where I feel comfortable, I come out more. But I have surrounded myself with an environment that's all based on relationships. When you think about it, then this really makes sense. Because, I didn't create a network that was all about big events. I created a network that was all about people getting together, getting to know each other and trust each other, and then doing business with each other. And that's not necessarily a high extroverted kind of an approach. And so it kind of all put the pieces together for me. And I think what's important then is for the average member, those extroverts don't care. They're going to be out there marketing and selling. But I really want to talk to the introverts here. The people who feel shy about introducing themselves to others, the people who don't feel comfortable necessarily speaking. I do because I took 6 years of courses on speaking. Maybe that's why I've gotten to be reasonably decent at it. So, I did things to push myself out of that shell. But in BNI, introverts can excel because it's all about building the relationships. And it was really an epiphany for me. And what's really so funny is that my wife totally knew it. She's like, "Oh no, honey, you're an introvert. You just act like an extrovert out there, but you're an introvert." She got it. I didn't. I learned something about myself, and I hope the BNI members listening to this podcast can get something out of it as well.
Well, that's great. I just want to say that I think you have a real natural ability to talk to strangers, though.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It doesn't come naturally. I guarantee you.
Okay. Well, great. Do you want to share anything else, or are we pretty much done?
Nope. I'm sure I will share some of my visits here in France and in in Scandinavia. I'll be in Sweden mostly. I'll share that on my blog, so after you listen to this podcast, take some time to take a look at my blog at networkingentrepreneur.com, and I'm sure you'll see some pictures of me at the ICE Hotel.
Great, Dr. Meisner. Thank you so much. I just want to remind the listeners that this podcast has been brought to you by networkingnow.com, which is the leading site on the net for networking downloadables. Thanks so much for listening. This is Priscilla Rice, and we hope you'll join us next week for another exciting episode of the official BNI podcast.